An atrocious AP poll just dropped. Luckily, that's not going to matter very much longer. And finally, the bye week is over. We can get back to Oregon football. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Soder Report. My name is Kyle Soder, and today we're going to be talking Oregon Ducks and their path to the college football playoff. This last week in the college football landscape, there was a lot of change. There were a lot of big games. The number 8, 9, and 10 teams in the country go down. There was a lot of change this past week. And looking at Oregon's schedule this November, it gets tough the next few games. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to project whether or not we think the Oregon Ducks can get into the playoff, what seed they can potentially get, what opponent they could potentially get, and what their path looks like through the playoff. It's hard to have a worse path through the playoff than they did last year. So what does it look like this year being an 11-1 or 10-2 team? We're going to get to that. But first, I've got to tell you about my friends over at Elite Cacao. They are a nutrition supplement, a cacao-based supplement, and they help with your focus, memory, retention, and cognitive ability. You take a supplement just a few hours before you want to study, you want to work, you want to concentrate, and it's like a non-addictive caffeine is what it is. So head on over to www.elitecacao.com. Try out your supplements today. And that's almost butchered it, but that's our housekeeping. So let's get to the atrocious AP poll. I have it pulled up right here. Well, yeah, let's get to the AP poll first. Okay. So like I said last week, the number 8, 9, and 10 teams in the nation go down. So no more undefeated Georgia Tech. No more Miami. Shout out to Mario Cristobal. And then the number 9 team. Who was the number 9 team? Vanderbilt. Yes. Vanderbilt goes down to Texas, who the AP poll voters think is right back in the picture. So we're going to get into this. I'm going to go conference by conference, starting with the Big Ten. We're going to look at each team's path to the college football playoff. Now let's start with Oregon, since this is an Oregon podcast. This week, they've got unranked Iowa. They should be ranked. They should absolutely be ranked, but they've got unranked Iowa. They actually have the most votes of teams that did not get into the top 25. So the AP voters would have Iowa as the number 26 team in the nation. With this game, Oregon caught a break. It's a 1:30 p.m. start time, so you don't get the early body clock game, but you also don't get Koenig Stadium at night. So they hit the sweet spot on that start time. But this is going to be a close game. There are a lot of Oregon Duck fans saying that they think that Oregon is going to lose to Iowa. And if they come out and play the way they did against Wisconsin, then that could absolutely happen. They could lose to Iowa. I personally have them winning that game. Um, Historically, Dan Lanning has his team. Dan Lanning teams sort of stumble out of the bye. So I could see this being a very close game. I could see this being a nail biter, but I think that Oregon finds a way to get it done. It sounds like Dante Moore is in good health, and it sounds like everything's good to go. So we'll see what happens with Iowa. I think they win, but we'll talk about scenarios later. They then play Minnesota at home. I don't think anyone has any question whether or not they will win that game. And then they have USC at home. So let's just, out of curiosity, take a look at USC's schedule. They've got Northwestern this week. They should win that game at home. They've got Iowa at home. So hopefully they win that week. Hopefully this is a top. Hopefully USC can get themselves up to number 15 in the nation or something by the time they play this matchup. Oregon's. What am I doing here? Oregon's resume isn't necessarily the best right now. They currently, as it stands, they do not have a win against a top 25 opponent. Now, a lot of people hold that Penn State game in high regard. That was the number 3 team in the nation when they played. And a lot of the perception around that game is that Oregon broke Penn State. So that's why Oregon continues to be ranked high. But as time has gone by, that win has looked. The perception on that win has shifted just a little bit. So Oregon needs to beat some more ranked teams down the stretch to validate their number 6 ranking. So hopefully that game against USC is a top 15 matchup so that they can showcase that. And then same thing for Washington. I know that Washington is supposed to be Oregon's rival, even though Oregon beats them 75% of the time. But we do want to root for Washington. We want Washington to take care of business against Wisconsin, Purdue, and UCLA. And we want them to climb up as high as they can as well, so that Oregon can showcase that 2 weeks in a row. That game is going to be at Husky Stadium. So both of Oregon's road games, they have 2 more road games out of the 4. And both of them are at hostile environments, at Koenig Stadium and Husky Stadium. So those are going to be difficult matchups. I personally think that Oregon should go 4-0 down this stretch. I think they can, and I think they will. And I went back and forth on this. I went back and forth between 10-2 and 11-1. And I'll tell you why I decided on 11-1. Even though Koenig is a tough place to play, and Husky Stadium is a tough place to play, and USC has a lot of offensive firepower, and they're improved in the trenches. Even though they have all of those things coming up against them on this part of the schedule, and even though Oregon is a young team, and as a young team, they are going to be inconsistent, even though they've got all of those things, they have a coach and coaching staff that people continue to say is among the best in the nation. And people continue to say Dan Lanning is going to win a national championship eventually. Just give him time. People continue saying that over and over and over. People love Dan Lanning. They love saying that he's going to win a national championship. They love saying that Tosh Lupoy is an elite recruiter, and they've got elite recruiters on their staff, and they've got all the tools to win a national championship. And people continually say that Dan Lanning is a great motivator, and he's going to have his team ready to play games, even though he didn't have the team ready to play against Wisconsin and Indiana. But people say that Dan Lanning is a great motivator, and he has his team ready to play all the time. If that's all true, then Oregon, there's no reason they don't finish 11-1. And I believe that Dan Lanning is an elite motivator. I think that his staff is elite at recruiting. Just look at the last few years of recruiting rankings. They're top 10 every year. So they've got the talent. I do believe Dan Lanning is a great motivator. And Iowa gave him bulletin board material with the NIL thing. Apparently Dan Lanning turns into Bobby Boucher whenever someone mentions that Oregon has a tier 1 NIL program. He turns into Bobby Boucher, and they beat Oklahoma State 69-3. So if he's able to motivate his guys, then they shouldn't have a problem taking care of business the next 4 weeks. And they'll probably have a game in here where the young players, being young players, they're going to be inconsistent. They probably do have a clunker in here somewhere. And I think that whenever that game is, they find a way to get it done. I do. So I personally have Oregon going 11-1. We can entertain the possibility of Oregon going 10-2. And their chances of getting into the college football playoff would change whichever game they lose. If they lose this week to Iowa and they beat Minnesota, USC, and Washington, they might sneak in. If they beat Iowa, beat Minnesota, lose to number 15 USC, and then say they beat an unranked Washington, they're probably not in. But we're going to go through all those scenarios later. So, real quick, just going through the rest of the Big Ten. I've got Ohio State going 13-0, winning the Big Ten Conference Championship. I've got Indiana going 12-1, losing in the Big Ten Conference Championship. And I've got Oregon going 11-1. In the SEC, I have 13-0 Texas A&M. I've got 12-1 Alabama. I've got 11-1 Georgia. I've got 11-1 Ole Miss. I've got those 4 making the college football playoff. In the SEC, Vanderbilt is probably going to go 10-2. So it's worth having a conversation about them. But I think Tennessee, Oklahoma, I think those teams go 9-3. Over in the ACC, I have Georgia Tech going 12-1. They lost this last week to NC State. I think that's going to be... I just caught myself. Okay. I've got Georgia Tech going 11-2 because they played Georgia the last week of the regular season. So I think Georgia beats them. I think they go 11-2. Let me just pull up their schedule to check. Boston College, Pittsburgh, Georgia. Yeah. I've got them going 11-2, winning the ACC and sneaking into the back half of the college football playoff. And then I've got Miami going 10-2. Shout out Mario. And then I've got Virginia going 11-2, losing in the ACC championship to Georgia Tech. The Big 12 is where things really get weird. If you tell me BYU wins the Big 12, I wouldn't argue with you. If you tell me Texas Tech wins the Big 12, I wouldn't argue with you. If you tell me Cincinnati wins it, I wouldn't argue with you. I think those are the only 3 teams playing for the Big 12. But you've also got these other teams lurking in Houston, Utah, and Arizona State. At all 3 of those teams at 4-2. So I believe BYU, just look at their schedule real quick. They've got Texas Tech at Texas Tech this week. They come home to play TCU. They are at Cincinnati and then home against UCF. So I have them losing to Texas Tech this week. And then I have them beating TCU, beating Cincinnati on the road, and then beating UCF. I think Cincinnati got a little bit exposed against Utah. They didn't look too great. I don't think Utah is too great of a team. That BYU-Utah game set the quarterback position back 10 years in the state of Utah. Those are just a couple of quarterbacks that complete 50% of their passes. But I've got BYU going 11-1 in the regular season. I've got Texas Tech going 11-1 in the regular season, making the conference championship. And then I have BYU beating Texas Tech on a neutral site in the Big 12 championship. So I've got them splitting the next 2 matchups, both going BYU going 12-1, Texas Tech going 11-2. And then out of the group of 5, we have Memphis to watch. We've got James Madison University to watch. And then I really like North Texas. The North Texas Mean Green. So here's the American standings. You've got Navy, Memphis, North Texas. North Texas just beat Navy 31-17. So the group of 5, honestly, I don't know too much about this group of 5 pool. I've watched a few North Texas games, and I really like what I've seen so far. How about that, Kennesaw State? Anyway, I really like what I've seen out of North Texas so far. So I've got the Mean Green winning out, going 12-1, winning the American, and getting to that group of 5 spot. And then I've got Notre Dame winning out as well. So there's a lot there. And as you can see here from my college football playoff bracket, I've got number 1, Ohio State, number 2, Texas A&M, number 3, Indiana, number 4, Alabama. I think everyone agrees that the top 4 spots are going to be the winner of the Big Ten, the winner of the SEC, the loser of the Big Ten championship game, and the loser of the SEC championship game. I think everyone is in agreement that that is going to be the case. And then at number 5, I have Georgia. At number 6, I have Oregon at 11-1. At number 7, I've got Ole Miss. So when I was going through filling this out, I filled out number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I got to Ole Miss at 7, and I was kind of thinking to myself, wow, this is a boring exercise. I'm just listing off the AP poll. I'm just going to list off the top 11 of the AP poll. But it gets crazy after that. So I filled out that top 7. I've got North Texas at 12. And then basically I had 4 spots for 6 teams. Those 6 teams being Notre Dame, Virginia, Miami, Georgia Tech. Hold on. I've got 7 teams for those 4 spots. Notre Dame, Virginia, Miami, Georgia Tech, BYU, Texas Tech, and Vanderbilt. Those 7 teams vying for 4 spots in this bracket that I'm projecting. So, as you can see, I had BYU winners of the Big 12 at number 8. Notre Dame at number 9. I've got them going undefeated. I think going into conference championship weekend, Notre Dame is ahead of BYU, but I think BYU's win over Texas Tech propels them in front of Notre Dame again to get home field advantage. At number 10, I've got Texas Tech, loser of the Big 12 championship game. At 11, I have Georgia Tech playing Oregon, which, by the way, sign me up as an Oregon fan. I would take that matchup any day. And then, like I said, at number 12, I've got North Texas. My first teams out are Vanderbilt, Miami, and Virginia. Virginia's my first team out. And then Vanderbilt, and then Miami. So, that is my projected college football playoff bracket. I do have Oregon winning out, assuming that they have a top 10 coach in the nation that will get them ready to play these next 4 games. It's a tough 4 games, but they're the more talented team than all 4 of those teams, and they presumably have the better coaching staff. So I have ripped that coaching staff to shreds on this show here. All 3 of them, really. I've given Tosh his praise lately, but I have really gone in on Will Stein and Dan Lanning. And the reason I do that is not because I dislike them. I do think that they are great coaches. I'm not calling for Will Stein's job. The reason I go in on those guys so tough is because I love the Oregon Ducks, and I am comparing that coaching staff to a coaching staff that can win a national championship. And the inconsistency has been infuriating. And I don't think that they will get it done this year. Assuming they get here, I think they beat Georgia Tech. And that rematch against Indiana, I think that could be a little... I'm not going to mention the name of the game, but the game that shall not be mentioned that took place in the Rose Bowl on January 1st. I think that that Oregon-Indiana rematch would have a little bit of that to it. I think Oregon would win that game by 2 touchdowns in a rematch. Maybe I'm crazy, but that's just my gut feeling. And then Texas A&M, I mean, if we were to crown a national champion right now, it might be Texas A&M. They've looked extremely good. So I don't know if that game took place, I would expect Texas A&M to win that game. But who knows? The teams are going to look a lot different by the time by the end of December and January roll around. That game would take place the 8th or the 9th of January, by the way. So teams are going to be very different by then. Julian Sayin might be the Heisman winner by then. We don't know. But that's what I've got for the college football playoff bracket. I think Oregon goes 11-1. Now, if they lose to Iowa, assuming it's a close game, that would probably drop them back behind. Let's take a look at the rankings again real quick. BYU and Texas Tech are playing each other. Oregon would stay ahead of the loser of that game. The AP voters love Oklahoma. It would probably drop them behind them. I think Oregon would stay ahead of Virginia. They'd be in that 11 to 12 range right there if they lost. That's what I think. And then they would have 3 more games to make up ground. If they're in that 11 spot, then obviously you just hold your ground for the next 3 games and you're in the playoff. You're probably going to be a 10 seed. So maybe you have to go to Ole Miss, which that would be a really tough matchup. Would not like that. Maybe you have to go. Maybe you're the 11th seed, and you have to go and play like a Georgia or a BYU. Which, if it's the BYU one, sign me up. But I don't like the idea of going to Georgia. I have PTSD from week 1 of 2022. No thank you. So that's just a little bit of what it could look like if they lose to Iowa. Now, if they lose to USC and they finish the season with no ranked wins, then 10-2 isn't good enough. At that point, heck, USC probably makes the college football playoff. They're 6-2. Yeah, if they beat Oregon, that could propel them into the playoff. If you lose to Washington the last week of the season, then you're probably not getting in. So, I expect them to win this week at Iowa. I expect them to win the next 4 games. But my expectation coming into the season, bare minimum, was that you make the college football playoff. If you do not make... Oh, I'm moving all over. If Oregon fails to make the college football playoff, that would be a massive disappointment in my eyes. And maybe no one gets fired, but you would have to start out next season with some coaches on a warm seat. Someone would have to answer for a team as talented as Oregon not making the college football playoff. So, that is my opinion on how the rest of the 2025 season is going to go. Of course, this is college football. Things are going to get crazy. Texas A&M, Texas. I didn't even talk about Texas. They might beat Texas A&M and Georgia and make the college football playoff. I don't expect that to happen. I didn't even talk about it because I think the probability of that is extremely low. But that's something that could happen. There are other teams that I didn't talk about. If you think that, I don't know, a Louisville is going to make the playoff, then put it in the comments below. And while you're commenting, please subscribe, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm here covering the Oregon Ducks. Also, I talk about the San Francisco Giants, the San Francisco 49ers. So, please, if you like the video, like and subscribe. It helps me out so much. We've been getting a ton of views on this channel lately. So, please continue to help the channel grow. And if the Oregon videos keep getting such good feedback, then I'm going to produce more of the Oregon videos for you guys. So please do that for me. And tell me if you think I'm crazy. Tell me if you think Oregon is going to lose to Iowa, or if they're going to lose to Washington or something like that. So I'm going to be here talking about the Ducks the rest of the season. You'll have my thoughts, and I hope to hear from you guys as well. So that's going to be all for tonight. Thank you all, and have a nice night.